to our What Comes Next event for psychology students, criminology students, cognitive clinical neuroscience students, and counselling students. Today's event is organised by our alumni relations team and myself, who will be chairing the panel today. Joining with me are our wonderful panel members who are going to share some insights with you about their career paths, their choices, and what it is that they're doing right now and where they're at in their careers. So, what I'm going to be doing is briefly introducing them, and then what we're going to do after that is I'm going to ask them some questions. Then at the end, there's going to be an opportunity for you to put some questions to the panel, and that will be followed by a networking event. If you're going to be wanting some questions that you want to ask them, the way you can do that is either by raising your hand at the end, or you can use the QR code on the feedback sheet that's on your desks. Okay? But just before we start, just a few little bit of housekeeping issues, or not issues, some housekeeping. The session is going to be recorded, which means you'll get access to it later, hence why registering for this event will give you the access. Also, just a reminder to make sure that you have registered for today as well as signed in for today's event. The alumni team will be passing around a register, so just make sure that you sign off. Okay. And at the end of the event, we're going to ask you just to give some feedback through the feedback sheet that's on your desk, so we have a bit of an idea of how you felt about today's event, and you might get a chance to win a £20 voucher. So, without further ado, I'm very excited and delighted to welcome our alumni. I always get quite emotional when I do this, don't I? Last year too, right? Yeah. So can we start off with welcoming our alumni, Nima, Phoebe, and Rachel. That's great. So perhaps what we could start off with is, could you perhaps say what you studied and when you graduated? Let's start off with that. And a little bit about your career right now. Do you want to start?
Yeah. I'm Nima Lakani, and I study BSc Psychology. I graduated quite a while ago. I graduated back in 2003 and I was on the Regent Street campus. My career has been very skewed. It's not been linear. So at the moment I am a wellbeing coach. I work in schools and I coach head teachers, leadership teams, parents on wellbeing. And I initially, after graduating, wanted to become an education psychologist. So I did the BSc Psychology degree. I got into teaching because back then the route into education psychology was through teaching. And I fell in love with teaching. So that was my career for the next 20 years. And due to some priority changing along the way, I retrained as a life coach, and now I run my own business called And Then Reflect and Learn. That's me.
Thanks, Nima.
So I'm Phoebe. I did my BSc Psychology and Counselling, and I was here in these lectures not so long ago. I graduated in 2023. Yeah, that's the one. I was the time just flown. I did a placement year as well, which I did in the pediatric outpatient department, which was amazing. Since then, I've been doing my master's at UCL with the Anna Freud Children's Clinic in early child development, which I recently finished in December, and I should be graduating this year. And I'm looking to apply for the child and adolescent psychotherapy doctorate as well. So that's me.
Thanks, Phoebe.
Hello, hi. I did clinical and cognitive neuroscience as a bachelor, and I graduated in 2022. I then went on to do my master's at King's College in neuroscience, and then straight after that I went into graduate medicine. But I only stayed there for about 2-3 years, and made the decision to leave due to health and how intense the course was, if I'm honest. And now I'm a technical writer in advanced materials, so we supply advanced materials for medical devices, for heart devices, diabetes, an array of medical appliances, as well as aerospace, which was super interesting to get into. So I do some publications at work as well as do some publications with Oxford with gastrointestinal medicine, essentially.
Thank you. So let's just start off with thinking about the transitions from when you were at university and then moving from your degree into the real world. What was the biggest adjustment you had to make after graduating, would you say? Anyone can answer. Anytime.
I think for me it was learning that I'm responsible for something beyond myself. So I remember when I graduated and did the psychology degree, I went straight into postgraduate study into the PGC at the Institute of Education. And at the age of 22, I was given this class of 30 children who I was responsible for, and for both their well-being and their academic learning. And that was a really scary thing. And at uni, you kind of have a buffer where you're kind of got that external structure. But actually, when I started working in the real world, it was all on me. So it's really important about I was committed to how I showed up, how hard I worked, and what I gave to my jobs. That was, I think, like I said, the biggest adjustment was thinking about things beyond myself.
So the fear around a bit of responsibility.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about
I think one of the largest adjustments for me was transitioning from being a student into adult life, but kind of swimming and not really knowing the direction I was going in, but also the amount of pressure I was putting on myself to academically perform whilst also entering into a job market that isn't the best at the moment. So it's just trying to find your feet, your narrative in that space, and it's really difficult to try to stay optimistic whilst also being realistic with what energy you can put to places and giving yourself a break as well. That was super important. I wasn't great at giving myself a break. I went through degree and then crash and burn. So it's really good to have some time to just heal, just rest. You know, degrees aren't easy to do, and afterwards you have this anticlimactic feeling of now what, and then you kind of get into that mentality. So it's just give yourself some time. I think that was the main adjustment that I needed to do, was take the pressure off myself a little bit. And there is always time. Your career isn't instant. You don't need to meet the milestones that quickly. You can slow down.
Yeah. So giving yourself a bit of a breathing space.
Yes.
What you're saying, emotionally.
I feel like I needed that advice actually. Because I finished my masters in December, and I feel like I'm in a weird limbo at the moment, really, if I'm being honest. It's really challenging. So I did my bachelor's and then my masters in succession, like straight after one another, and that was fine because I had something lined up. I could enjoy a little bit of summer that I had, and I was graduating. It was a great year for me. When I did my masters, I did some prep beforehand, but that was all I had to really think about. But going to masters and finishing and not knowing if I would do the doctorate this year because it's insanely competitive and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm managing a lot of uncertainty at the moment. As you said, the job market is not great right now, so looking for AP roles is very tricky. There's a lack of funding and so many trusts now, so it's really tricky. And it's just literally managing my anxiety and my uncertainty at the moment, and you feel a little bit lazy once you finish uni and you're not doing work constantly. Because I went from very intense preclinical training to doing nothing really, and I'm not doing nothing, but I feel as though I'm doing nothing, and I am working and I'm looking for jobs and I'm doing my doctorate interview process and everything, but it still doesn't feel the same. The structure's not the same, and as you say, you're kind of like contained within a course, within something, and you lack that when you finish. So it's a hard place to be. It's not, people talk about their grad experience being difficult, but I don't think I've really understood it until now. So it's challenging. I think just be kind to yourself, be gentle, give yourself grace, and know that you're not lazy. You're just not so massive and amazing, and things take time, but you'll get there.
I mean, Phoebe, thanks for really sharing that, particularly around the uncertainty that you're describing, because I suspect that there might be some students here as well who are not quite sure what they want. and feel maybe that pressure that they need to know exactly what they want after graduating. And here you are, you have done that master's, and you're almost back in that position, although you have a master's, of course, and you have a lot of experience around that. But I really think that's so, sharing that is such, I think it's really, really wonderful that you've just been able to say that.
Thank you.
Yes. Looking back, if there was anything you, looking back, what is one thing you wished you would have known before finishing at university?
Not writing graduate on my CV would be a really good one because you do get slight age discrimination, especially in the job market. I would suggest, in my own experience, just writing what degree you did. I don't really put when anymore, anyway, from experience, the date that I graduated, just because they will look at certain areas, depends on what industry you go into. They'll look at that as if you are inexperienced, even though you're technically very adequate, you know what you're doing, you've just done a degree, but you are competing in a market that they would want experience at the same time as well. So try to not self-limit with mentioning that it was really recent graduation. And that seemed to actually work. A lot of my friends also had that experience, but the minute they removed saying recent graduate and just saying had a degree in, their interviews were coming in a lot quicker. So that was one thing that I probably would have done a lot sooner, but it's a learning curve.
That's a really great tip. Yeah.
I think for me, putting less pressure on myself. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself that I had to achieve certain things by a certain time, that you had to reach certain milestones in order to feel like successful, and actually going through life I realise that's not true, and that's what I'm telling my kids, that actually you can achieve anything you want at any time, and I think I pressure myself a lot to follow a linear route.
Yeah, I mean, I love the analogy that you're referring to as linear. It's
Yeah.
like we are on this trajectory, and we're expected to kind of follow this particular linear route.
And everyone works at different paces. Everyone achieves things at different paces, So.
And it's okay if that route is zigzag.
And actually, more opportunity happens when you're in a zigzag.
Like
You
in
know,
this
just,
case.
yeah.
Phoebe, what about you?
I think mine connects quite nicely to yours actually, so it's great that you said that because I do think it's really challenging when you finish. Obviously, as I said, it's really hard to manage the uncertainty, but there are other things that may be at play for you. Like for me, it's health and financial insecurity, and these are things that are tricky to manage. And you try and line up jobs. I was applying to jobs before I graduated, and I do advise that people start looking into that if you have the capacity, because it does take time. And it's not too early to start when you're just before finishing, maybe as soon as you can. But the financial security and the other elements like that, they are very tricky to manage. And I think it's hard to really give you advice because everyone has a different path. I think what's important with psychology in particular is there is no one path. And I don't think I've ever met two people that had the same path, genuinely. So I think that's something to be mindful of, and just taking time not to rush the next stage and thinking for a minute, what do I really want? What feels right for me right now in this stage of my life? Am I doing this for the right reasons? If it is the next step, just taking time to reflect. I could have done a doctorate, like I could have applied last year and gone straight in. And had I done that, that would have been a really big mistake, I think, doing the doctorate straight away, because there's no space physically, mentally, emotionally for you to reflect and absorb everything kind of process. And there's a lot to be said for that, more than you may realise. And I've changed so much in those few months. So I think being mindful of that, give yourself time and space, and don't rush it.
Really invaluable. Let's think about some of the turning points and perhaps some of the challenges that you might have had along the way. Can you walk us through a few key turning points in your career so far?
I'll be you to have quite a few.
You have a few,
A
yes.
few turning points. After I finished the degree in psychology here, I was dead set on becoming an education psychologist. So, but then when I did my teaching, when it was time to decide to become an education psychologist and do the masters in it, I made the decision and changed and pivoted completely and stayed in teaching for over 20 as I grew as a person, I had kids, the scope of teaching got more demanding on me, it affected my health, it didn't allow me to spend time with my children and my family. So then my second big turning point, I'd say, was when I left teaching full time, and that was a massive decision because it's something I really knew and I was really familiar with. And after leaving teaching, my third, I'd say, turning point was pivoting to a brand new career which had actually a massive psychology base, which is wellbeing coaching. So retraining completely at older age with children and other responsibilities, and going to uni and doing everything again, and starting my own business again, something I wasn't familiar with. So that was a big thing, and I think because my priorities changed at each stage, I started looking more after myself and what worked for me, like you said. And so I'd say that, yeah, there's a lot of turning points in my life.
And I'm going to pick up on that later, question around, your business. Okay.
So I had a turning point probably, I would say last year. I was doing medicine and I'd only had about 15 months left until I qualified entirely. But my health wasn't that great and the hours were so exhausting, and it got to a point where I was having to decide between my health and my career, and at that point I thought I'd pause and just have some time. And if I'm honest, even though that was my entire identity at that point of what I wanted to do, and actually paid for the course as well, it was quite frustrating. I had a bit of an identity crisis within that time, just because I didn't really know at that point, especially when you work towards a set goal, and you feel like you've crossed even halfway, for you to U-turn and do something different. So that was quite a daunting time. I didn't know whether I should go forward with it or not. But I'm so glad that I actually made that decision to leave, because the route that I've now gone down in terms of technical writing in a more advanced materials industry, I'd say, has been really fulfilling. And my skill set being used in a really different way, and I didn't realise how much I would enjoy it, whilst also not, falling down with my health. So it's a big improvement in my life in general, and I have structure now, and probably might go back to medicine at some point, but at the moment it's just a really good decision. And I think not being scared of letting go of your own ideas of who you want to be, you might find a better route and work out, actually, no, this fits me a bit more.
And it's interesting what you're saying, because I'm thinking here, sometimes it takes a lot of courage, to actually decide, what, maybe this is not for me, or maybe I need to change tack, or physically I'm not able to maybe maintain, or this is not really something I thought of. So it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it, to sort of step aside and to change tack. And often we beat ourselves up if we do that, because we think, we need to carry on that trajectory. So it's nice that you felt that you were able to do that, you were courageous enough to do that, and here you are. Exactly, here you are, yes. Phoebe, what about you? What about your turning points?
So very tricky question for me, for some reason I'm really struggling. I think it's interesting because I was reflecting, when I was like 16, and thinking about applying for university, I really liked Westminster actually, but I was applying for Spanish here. I wanted to be a translator. That was my initial plan, until I realised that any spare moment I had, I was helping others and looking into psychology and neuroscience, and I'm just interested in everything to do with mental health and well-being, so my own experiences of it. And that was a big turning point. But that feels like it predates what we're talking about. But it is important for you to know that that is something about me. I had to write 2 personal statements, that was very fun. And I eventually did, got everything in, and ended up here regardless, very grateful for that. But there's been several mini things that have happened over the time. I wouldn't say it's as big as perhaps what you guys were saying, although it was really interesting to hear. I've not really had that experience, I suppose. I think maybe one big thing was a lecture that I had with Nick Hoss once, and he said, it's a bit of a wake-up call for me about if you want to do child adolescent psychotherapy, you need to start looking at the prerequisites for that. You need to do infinite observation. You need to do all these things, and I had no idea. And I was very grateful to him and to Sanjay and yourself, Chantal, that everyone gave me extra information and advice, and I really utilised that resource. And eventually I ended up in my pre-clin training, but that was a big turning point. And then one more was my NICU placement that I did on my masters, and that made me realise I love perinatal just as much as child lessons as well. So I guess those were big turning points for me.
Great. How did you figure out what opportunities that were right for you at different stages of your career?
I think for me, and it's really niche, but finding actually what your job description is in a different way of framing it. So especially when you're applying for jobs, rewording it in a certain way will actually expose a lot more sectors you can go into. So if you were to say, oh, I'm a technical writer, you could also be a medical writer or a medical communications. So finding actually the titles that you are associated with can open up a lot more avenues than what you're just typing in online, particularly if you're applying for roles. Because people actually name these jobs differently, but your skills are very translational. So you can apply those to many different areas, but make sure that what you're searching up, or even on LinkedIn, just seeing what title that you could have, there's going to be different ones. So if you look into those areas and just investigate, majority of the time the description is the same, but look at the titles that your role has. That's a piece of advice I'd give, because it actually opened up a lot more doors for me personally anyway. And it was all the same skill set, but you might just be called something else in a different industry. So don't limit yourself just in terms of the science route with just the key terminologies. You might be called something else in a different industry, and they might have a bit more value for you as well. Less saturated market, a bit more translational of what you can do, but it's exactly the same role, but just with a different heading, essentially.
Sorry.
I think for me it was not so much as figuring out what opportunities I had. I think it's more about being intentional about noticing what opportunities I had, because I think often we do have more opportunities, but we don't notice them because we ourselves close ourselves up, oh, that's not going to be good for me, or I'm not going to be able to do that, or it makes us feel a bit uncomfortable. But actually saying yes to more things and being more open, and as I progressed through my career, I got more confident and actually saw those opportunities and opened myself up to taking more risks and doing those things, despite the fact that I had discomfort. And I think for me, that's been really, really powerful. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is really powerful, particularly the openness and noticing,
Yes.
rather than being maybe fixated on that trajectory, which could work for many,
Yes.
but still maybe staying
Being fluid, yeah.
being fluid,
Yeah.
flexible.
Important, yeah.
Love it.
I think it's quite simple for me that you have to be fairly good at something you're doing to get by. That is one obstacle. Obviously hard work can help with that, and natural ability, I suppose, has to be part of it, but not necessarily. But I think interest, I follow my interest. I have always loved everything I've studied and pursued. That's not to say you don't have to do a few things along the way that maybe you're not as interested in. It's all part. You're never going to find a job that does every single thing and you love every single thing. You've got to be realistic. But I think for the most part, I can safely say I've always followed my heart, my interests. I think opportunity is a really interesting word though, because when I think about, and I'm going to keep bringing it back to my favourite reference, which is the doctorate process. If you are looking to do PhDs or doctorates, even masters, it's not always very accessible, especially if you come from like a low income background or minority. Just generally, it's not very accessible, and the word opportunity is a tricky one for me to digest. I think, okay, because does it seem like an opportunity for me and the type of person I am and my background? And it didn't always seem that way. I just didn't think I could even go to university, to be honest with you, at one point. To my undergrad, I didn't know that was going to be an opportunity for me. So being aware of maybe barriers and difficulties, but not letting them get in your way, because there is always some sort of way. You have great support here at the university, utilising resources, especially whilst you're here, but ultimately following your desires and your interests. Yeah.
Just on the topic of the barriers or obstacles that you're just referring to, Phoebe, were there any challenges that you might have had that you feel shaped your direction? And what did you learn from them, if any?
Well, for me, it was mainly my health at the time, because I couldn't physically do the hours that were required in medicine. So I thought I'll defer, have some time, think that then led me on to my more technical writing roles, because I was already publishing anyway with certain research bodies, and they were pretty remote because it was just manuscript editing, doing some dry lab research. So I then thought, okay, if I have to work with what my body was doing at the time, then that's the route I'll be going down. And actually that's been way better. My health's improved immeasurably. So it's mainly not self-limiting yourself as to what you think you can do, but also knowing there are other spaces that you can fit that aren't the ones that you thought that were just suited to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Sorry. I'd say the same. I think it's as well. So, you know, when you're in a career and things are familiar and comfortable, you stay in that career, and sometimes you feel that you need to be in that career because that's what you know, and that's what feels comfortable, and that's what works for you. But actually, over time, that career didn't work for me. I had children. I was trying to be perfect as a teacher, perfect as a mum, perfect as a wife, and actually, that had a massive impact on my health. So, such a big impact, I didn't know it was actually affecting me into crashing down. So I had to leave something that was familiar through no choice of my own. And I think that reshaped the fact that I started my own business. I helped other people who actually now I feel will hopefully not go through the same thing as me in kind of having that crash and leaving teaching because I'm doing well with education, you know. So yeah, I'd say health and priorities has really changed me.
I think actually, I have two. I'd say the first one to link to yours nicely, both of you, is health. I suffer from really bad migraines, which is stress induced, and spending time at a screen is not very helpful. And as you can imagine, there are certain points where I question if I would be able to be at a desk or in an academic job or something that would require me to constantly be looking down reading, or which also is a hobby of mine, so it doesn't help. But there is things like that that stop me along the way, and it's just a case of managing my perfectionism. Then maybe I can't read every single paper, or maybe I won't read as fast as everybody else, or do this as thoroughly as I want to, or I can't maybe get that top grade today because I'm just having a period of ill health. And being accepting and kind to myself about that and not berating myself for it, which is still a challenge ongoing, I think, for me. But also, I think just thinking about the doctor, I was surprised I'm bringing that up again, because last year I did look into applying, and the prerequisites actually changed during the application window. I would have been able to apply with the particular prerequisites I had. I was meeting and I had all the things I needed, but they changed the requirements, and that was a major setback because I had in my head, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply to this, and once I finish my masters, great, hopefully I'll get on and I can go on to the doctorate. But it wasn't as simple as that. I had to work for an extra 6 months on my open observation and put things in place for that, which brought its own set of challenges. So it's being open to the fact that things can change at any time. My priorities had shifted in the meantime anyway, so it worked out for the best, but I think it was a setback because it wasn't what I had anticipated myself.
Let's look at skills and bring it back to the degrees that you did. So, which skills do you feel were really valuable for you that you got from your degrees? And how it helped in your careers?
For me personally, it was doing the writing and the essays and the research papers. Those basically from my undergraduates carried me through my entire career, if I'm honest. And honing in on those skills and polishing up your technical writing ability and the way that you frame your narratives and making sure you're really thorough. And even though I know there's obviously AI up and coming, or is already here, just remember that we still need the human aspect to writing. It's really obvious, especially in the medical sector. You can really tell if something's being written by AI versus an actual human. So even though those skills might seem a bit redundant now to be practicing, because you think, oh, it's AI's going to replace us anyway, we see it anyway, we all know, and they actually are increasing the amount of people that are being employed with writing and research papers because they don't want that to be the case. They want it to be more organic and actually use human skills. So from my degrees, definitely the writing capability was the biggest skill that I took from that.
I think for me, it was, psychology gave me a lot of insight into understanding people, the empathy, the behaviour cues, and even now in my coaching, both one-to-one and group coaching, that helps me to understand people, to manage people in the right way, and to support them in the best way I can according to their personalities, because everyone is different. So that for me was a big thing, and I still use it to this day. So it's really important.
I think what's unique about Westminster is the network and the community, because I mean, I'm still back here today with us, but I'm in touch with a lot of other professors and lecturers that we've had as well, as well as Chantal. And I think that's really unique. I've been at another institution since, and definitely kept in touch with people, but there's a particular sense of community here. Building those interpersonal skills and networking skills from just as early as my first year. I think that's something that I was only able to have because I started here. The academic kind of rigour and the hard work as well was another thing. I was learning to survive that and manage the workload and writing at a certain standard. So those things were definitely there as well. But I do think the soft skills like social skills in a more professional environment, especially having done the placement. I want to work clinically, and I started those skills very early on in my third year, which is a real privilege to be able to do that. I was afforded that opportunity by having a placement year, and even your placement module that you do, I think is really helpful. So I think those are the things I'm most grateful for from this year.
So we have writing skills, report writing, understanding people, interpersonal skills. Any other skills that you can think of?
I think critical thinking, reflection is
So
big one,
being able to reflect. Yeah. Okay.
Also knowing that actually, because we have the experience here, where we get feedback, when you take it into the real world, feedback is not something you can be defensive about. Feedback is something you can reflect on and move forward with and grow with. I think that's really important.
So being able to accept the feedback that you receive and knowing what to do with that, having that ability to do so. I'm curious, what about skills like working with other people, like teamwork?
Yes.
Do you feel that that was a useful, because we do have a lot of assessments here that are around teamwork, and we know that there are complexities around teamwork, don't we? And I'm just wondering, how did you feel that was useful to have that experience here working?
Definitely, especially with the route that I went down, we have independently worked with our, essays and doing things that I can't even think of what other way to frame it, but our assessments that we would do in university, when you then move into a more collaborative space and you have other team members that might not like the way you work or the way that you wrote something, or you have to work together, you have to get the skills, especially interpersonal skills, to make sure that you are professional and making sure that you can transfer your ideas with confidence, with limited arrogance as well. That was a large issue with some of the writers I've worked with personally, but sometimes there is conflicts, and it's just about navigating those without making it a personal thing. And working as a team, that's really big, especially in the industry that I went into anyway. It's about being collaborative, but also allowing other people to have their voice and their opinions, and not being too sensitive around whether they have opinions to you as well. So it's just kind of moving into a more adult-framed mindset, I guess, with your emotions in the workplace as well. It's really important to keep on top of that. Don't let things get to you. And I think personal skills, especially, and time management was a really big one. I think at university I probably overdid it in terms of how much time I was putting into something, and you can go either way with it. Make sure you are staying on top of your work, but also not going down the route to the floor, basically.
I think I work in MDT, I've worked in MDT when I was in the NICU, and if you're going to be in the NHS or working in healthcare or as a clinician, that's a major part of your work. It's an essential part. It's what makes the NHS so great. It's what makes the clinical practice in the UK so great, is that we bounce off each other, we manage difference, we try to manage difference. especially as a psychological professional, it's our skill probably it's better than anybody else. Our skill set is better at managing difference, understanding it, recognizing it. And it comes back to being open and curious as well. If you are not like, oh, why did they say that way? Why did it? And you're thinking, no, actually, why? Yeah. Why are they? It's your tone is different, you know. You're thinking, why have they done it that way? That's so interesting. What can that say about them? How does that reflect on maybe what someone's going through or what their perspective is? And being open to difference and valuing difference, even.
Yeah, I like the word when you say curious. It taps a little bit on what I was saying about the openness, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So, is there anything on your CV, such as work experience or extracurricular activities, that you feel gave you that extra competitive edge?
I think
So outside your academic abilities. So anything extra that you feel that helped you?
I think I did a lot of voluntary work. I used to work with the homeless, I used to work with after school clubs, I worked in retail. Every opportunity I got to work and meet different people, it gave me an understanding more for myself as well of, because I always thought everyone was like me. I'm a student, everyone's like me. But actually there's so many different types of people with so many different stories and so many different life experiences. And for me, being exposed to so many different types of people and so many different skill sets gave me confidence. So that was, I think, a big thing for me.
I think maybe the placement is the first thing I think of. I know it's not academic, but I'm going to have a little loophole. This is clinical work in the academic space, I don't know. I think that was a good springboard for me in terms of making connections in the NHS and in neighbouring agencies as well. So I think that was great, a great start. But also, as you were saying, like just any work you can find, any volunteer work, being open to volunteer work, if it's something that's like financially feasible for you, if you can do a little bit of that, just being open to all different opportunities, kind of what we were saying before. So I just did loads of work in schools and in clinics and different practices, and there was one opportunity during my placement even to stay for a bit longer to do some work in different departments of the hospital, and I said yes. So saying yes. And I think those things are just colouring your CV with more unique experiences, and then you build your network and you link in with more and more people, and that opens more opportunities and so on.
Kind of bouncing off what you've just said, even though it kind of isn't academic, but even just extra skills. So if you want to go into clinical trialling and things, even if you've got a phlebotomy course done, you actually will stand out quite a lot more because you have an extra skill that they might need. They might need a blood tester there, but everyone else was just academic, but you happen to go and pay for that course that you did over the weekend somewhere else. So getting those skills that you can add to your CV that aren't directly involved, but is in the industry that you're going into, that's really useful, particularly with research. Lots of extra skills like that does go a long way.
Do you know what? Sorry, to personally as well, doing things that are your hobbies as well, taking on new hobbies as well to show initiative, to show that you're able to be quite a whole person, diverse, that's the word. So it's kind of like, it's to show that you have enjoyed in other things and you're able to do other skills as well.
Does that mean that sometimes it's good to get outside our comfort zones?
Yes, absolutely. So important.
Have we experienced anything outside our comfort zones that we felt we actually learned from?
Today, for me, speaking in public, huge comfort zone. Cool. Yeah, and also going into different areas and working with different people. I had a bit of imposter syndrome, particularly with the research that I was doing, because everyone was considerably more older, if I'm honest. They were much more advanced in their careers, and I was one of the youngest ones there, and I had a bit of imposter syndrome and also didn't really feel like I had earned that space, even though I technically had. So I kind of struggled with fitting in as to where I sat in that narrative, but it's actually just knowing that that space is for you as well, otherwise you would be be there, and it's just about mentality. A lot of the time, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and just it can get a bit wrong. So if you just stay with reality as well, especially what's happening currently, not worrying about too far into the future because you don't really know how it's going to go. And I think it's all worked out for best for us anyway, even if we've had some curveballs along the way, but just not predetermining who you are or your career path, because you might surprise yourself.
I think we can go out and have the same problem.
Yeah.
And you build your confidence, let's say.
So, if we were to think about giving advice to some of our students, what advice would you give with regards to doing a postgraduate study?
I think do it if it serves a purpose and if it's something you really want to do, but don't do it because you want to delay a decision and you're kind of delaying what you want to do because you're not sure. Do it because you think it's going to really lead you somewhere. That's my personal view. Also, I think study can happen at any age, not straight after uni. It's ongoing, and you can choose to do whatever you want. So, I think it's important as well.
So what you're saying is, if you're maybe do it with the right intention.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think also making sure that you are looking around, not just at what they academically, their reputation of these institutions that you go to apply for, but whether you fit in that space as well. Sometimes you can want to go to certain spaces and realise, oh, that didn't really fit well with me, or how I work, or the environment that you're in. So I think definitely look into those aspects, go to the open days, make sure you're speaking to people and connecting with them, just because you might have a pre-idea as to how it would go, the energy of the space, and you might not like it at all. So just also in the direction of where you want your career to go, don't self-limit with your postgraduate, just because you can go onto a very niche specialty and that might limit you long term, depending on if you want to then pivot somewhere else. So try to keep an idea, a general idea as to where you're going with it. Look around, not just that specific topic. I think I advise that as well. See where you can fit elsewhere. It's always a good idea.
Equally as well, don't be afraid to pigeonhole yourself a little bit if you want to, because I went very niche with mine, and I acknowledged that it was very specific early child development, and it was very specific age set, specific modality and theory based, but I felt sure that's what I wanted, and I knew it was an interest of mine at the time. It was a very competitive course. I was afraid of doing it, but I was open to it because I knew this is what I wanted to do. Perhaps I could have taken a year out, and maybe that would have been a nice break for me. And maybe I would have been less burnt out by the end of it, because I was very burnt out by the end of my degree. But I think maybe don't rush into it. If you need to save and take some time to do some work and kind of go away and come back, that's fine. There is no rush. I've had many mature students in my class with me. I think I was definitely one of the youngest actually. And it's not linear, as we were saying earlier, but I think be open to it. Mine certainly served a purpose, but equally, if you're really interested and you have the means and the capacity left in your multiple degree, then do it. Yeah.
So if you were starting university again, I know you all three touched upon not putting pressure on yourselves. Aside from that, what might you do differently?
I would probably be much more involved in the extracurricular side of things. I think that's what I didn't go into too much of that. The extra seminars possibly, or just networking events especially, they're so useful, and I think I didn't register that when I should have, because now in a networking environment later on, those things are really beneficial, and also adding those extra skills is really useful. But I think I probably would have done a lot more of the involvement side within the university, not just the academics of the course essentially.
The same, to be honest, more done myself. Group societies, more kind of non-academic kind of things, because I was very focused and wanted to get things done academically. So, yeah.
I think, extracurriculars are good. I didn't join any societies actually. I don't think during my time, even though I love art and baking and different things like that, I could have done that. But I think equally, I remember just every time a lecture finished, bolting to either the library or home, because I lived in London and I was here in London, and I was like, I've got to get home to study, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. There's no time, there's no time. There is time, there's always time, even when it feels like there's not. Give yourself a minute. If your friends say you can go for a coffee, or you see people on their own, maybe approach them as well. Just make the most of your community within your cohort, and just be with people, be with them, and be with each other. Go see the lecturers for a bit if they don't mind, and say hello like I used to do. Because I do think that it just goes so quickly, and you don't want to look back and be like, well, all I did was sit at my desk. I didn't do that, by the way, and I'm glad. I was pleased with my grade. I was happy with that, proud of myself, and I don't regret that. I think I needed to do it, it served a purpose. But I do think equally you're never going to get that time back to be with your friends and be together in the time. And there's something to be said for that. So enjoy that too. Don't rush. Don't run from lecture to lecture, or just slow down. You know,
Enjoy them, that's big.
So enjoy the ride. Yeah. I'm curious, before you graduated, might there have been any worries or concerns that you might have had about employment? And now where you're sitting, how true is that?
Yeah, so I had a really niche experience with that because I had actually got a job in a pharmaceutical company before I had graduated. So I was pretty calm with it. However, it then went wrong. So they decided, oh no, we've overemployed, things like that. So then I went from being really comfortable going, okay, great, straight out of university into a job, really secure, to then 6 weeks later, oh no, it's all gone wrong, I've missed the gap for applying, it's going to be so saturated. So I kind of went swimming after my undergraduate, and then I decided, okay, I need to upskill myself, I need to go and do a master's. So then I applied for King's and started following September. But I had that security blanket, but then it got swiftly ripped. So always have an extra, constantly be applying, even if you're still in that process of interviewing or finding that route you're going down, just because these employers, you sometimes are statistics, so they aren't as nurturing as the university environment would be. And I think that when you have been so nurtured at uni and everyone's so supportive, you have mentors to go to, you then get a little bit of reality that hits you when you graduate. As you know, the area that you're going into is really dynamic, it's really intense, really competitive, and just make sure that you kind of back yourself a little bit, because I think I should have had a bit more anxiety about leaving, but because I had that lined up, I didn't, and then the reality hits you. But that's life, so always have a backup plan if that doesn't go well. I think I probably could have had that advice a long time ago.
That's something you wish you would have known perhaps at the time.
Yeah. For me, it was, I thought everyone had to figure it out. So I left thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I feel like I know everything. What if I fail at interview? I need to know everything. But actually, once I got a job, I realised everyone's figuring out as they go along. It's not set in stone. And everything you know when you go into a job can also change, because you're always learning on the job as well. And also, I thought once you have a job, you feel settled, things are good enough for you to worry. But actually, within a job, within that system, systems change, people change, people leave, bosses change. So there's so much uncertainty. So there's no such thing as everything's going to be fine. You'll still have to be adaptable, still have to be open to change, still have to be working hard, showing up in the best way you can. And the only person that's control of that is you, no one else. So for me, that was big. Yeah.
Do you think that that's what we do okay here? Do you think that we give you the skills on how to be adaptable, or do you think we could do that better? Just curious.
I really benefited from that, from this university, and I've gone on to various different universities and gone into different areas within those in the material science now, but I found that this space was particularly nurturing. Everyone's open to conversations, advice, everyone had an extra thing to give, and that is actually very rare. And I think that at the time I didn't use that enough. So I think whilst you're still in the space, definitely use the people here, going that way, but make sure that you're looking at the opportunities, networking, giving your time as well for conversations, because you do gain from that, even if it feels like, oh, I've got things to do, I've got my exams coming up, or I'm graduating. You keep in contact with everybody, and this is a really, really healthy space. It's really supportive, especially when you then go on to second degrees or third, that you realise what the good thing you
I mean, I'm hearing all three of you are talking a lot about networking. So, how important or how do you then maintain relationships or professional relationships with others? What are some of the things that you have done? What's your journey been like in relation to networking?
I think a big thing for me is authenticity, because don't just be networking for the sake of networking. It's going to sound bad saying this here, but I don't really enjoy the term networking. I think it seems very inauthentic, and I wouldn't enjoy doing it. Even the events we had, I think one thing I didn't do was make use of them at the time, because I thought it was going to be some generic kind of, I don't know, meaningless thing. I'm just doing it for the sake of adding someone on LinkedIn. No judgment if someone's doing that, by the way. But I think there's something to be said for finding true meaningful connection with people, and finding staff that you connect to, and people that really align with you on your journey, or understand what it is you're going out for and what you need, and people that you just really enjoy talking to and feel seen by or understood by. And I think those are the connections that are long lasting, and you can find them. It's okay to just know people for now if you're early on in your career and just know people professionally. It doesn't go much further than that in terms of interest and connection. That's okay. That's not what I mean. I think being intentional, being authentic with people, and maintaining your professionality at the same time, but learning how to have those professional relationships, which is something that we really managed to do here, which is amazing. But I think those are the most important things to focus on, because that's where the long-standing relationships come from, where the opportunities come from. Because people think of you, they know you, when they're writing your references, they actually know you. Not, oh, she was a good student, she was alright, she was nice and worked hard. It's not generic, and when you have a reference that's not generic, and they use certain words because they know what it is you're going out for, they know what it is that you need from them, then that's when you get the best results, and also maintaining a good relationship with someone, which is amazing.
So I think what I'm hearing, what you're saying, I understand, Phoebe, that perhaps it's not only about the quantity, but actually what you're saying perhaps is about the quality.
Absolutely.
And back to the intention, being clear in why you want to go to a particular network or event, or with whom you'd like to connect with.
Absolutely.
And a really good tip actually is being networking.
Yes.
For me, especially because of my business,
Yes.
I don't like the word networking either. I think it's quite scary. So when I go to networking events, I don't go with the intention to sell myself. That won't get me anywhere. I go with the intention to build genuine connections and to meet new people and to learn and to grow as a person and my business. And because of that kind of networking, going with those intentions, my business has grown even more so than perhaps social media or marketing different ways, because people start trusting you, they recommend you, and they know what you're about.
On the subject of your business, are there any tips you could give, or what tips would you be able to give to our students who might be interested in setting up a business?
I think the biggest thing is think about your why. What do you want to do and why do you want to do it? So for me, I am really passionate about well-being because of what I went through myself, and I want to help people move forward and achieve their goals and have a really good mindset in doing that. So that's what drives me. So because of that, this business has been sustainable. Money matters, of course, but if that's your only driver, especially in the well-being space, it won't sustain you. It has to be authentic, it has to be, your intention has to be to help. So that's my major thing for when you start a business. Then start small, don't overwhelm yourself, think about what you need to do to get to where you want to be, and start small. So I started coaching, I wanted to coach, I started coaching moms because I'm a mum. Then I started coaching teachers because some of my clients happen to be teachers. Then teachers asked me to go into schools. Schools asked me to coach leadership teams. Leadership teams asked me to look into corporate coaching. And then I met people along the way who now I do international coaching with international people internationally. So you can start small and it will just grow organically. But start with one small step. And surround yourself with people who are already in the place that you want to go to. So if you want to be a psychologist, surround yourself with psychologists. Learn from them. See what they did. And take from that what will work for you, because not everything will work for everyone. And it doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter how fast you grow,
let's think about looking ahead. What excites you most about the future of your field or industry?
I'm very excited. I think I'm talking about quite a transition now where hopefully anything to about a doctorate year can get a chance to retrain and specialise and become really skilled in something I'm really interested in and finally get to the stage of qualifying. That is really exciting to me. I'm excited for the people I meet along the way because every time you do a new training you meet new people and I just love the novelty of the new experiences and just growing and expanding and learning, maturing, especially young. So I think that's what excites me, is just knowing that my opportunities are endless really, and that when you're doing this profession or just being in this field, you're dedicating yourself to lifelong study and lifelong learning, and whether that is formal or not. And I think that's what I really enjoy, is I never stop learning, I never stop meeting new people and connecting with others, and that to me is what my life should be about. So I'm really excited for that.
So I'm excited because the industry that I'm currently in is completely new to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. The trajectory is looking really good, particularly with the space that they're in at the moment, especially with medical devices, which I didn't think I'd be that interested in because I was more research-based and I had my way of doing things. So it certainly opened up the areas in which I could be going into, particularly with medical devices, and we recently worked with Neuralink, which was super interesting. So there's lots of different areas in which the company that I'm with go down. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes essentially.
I think I'm excited about the fact that wellbeing is now at the forefront of education, especially. It's being talked about a lot more as an essential, not optional. So that's really big. And for me, I feel privileged to make an impact in that world and to make a difference to people's lives. And for me, every day is exciting because I get feedback from my clients and I see progress. And for me, that's true excitement, true dream.
So I get the feeling that all three of you are pretty comfortable and very happy in your field, in your niche. Is that right? I know it's a dreaded question. It's the classic interview question, isn't it?
Where do you see yourself?
Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
I would probably be happy with where I am now if I was in this position I was in 5 to 10 years, just because I feel like I found my niche. I've found what I'm good at without exhausting myself, and I feel like I can really use the skills that I've got and feel recognised in the space that I'm in, because I wasn't in a saturated market, especially when you're in research spaces. Everyone has really impressive skills and you feel like you're just one and everyone's the same. So when reaching out to different areas, you actually feel a bit more value. People go, oh my god, you can do that, do this, and you realise, oh, actually, I actually have a good skill set. I just was in a very saturated space. So I would be pleased if I was still in this area in a few years, and maybe finish my medical degree, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yes.
I think I will hopefully be a newly qualified psychotherapist. That would be great in 5 years. At the latest, that'd be great. But who knows where life will take me? But I'm hoping. I think that will be the case. Either way, I'll be working with people in need. I know that much, and enjoying that, particularly children, adolescents, parents. I think within 5 to 10 years, I'd like to really have improved my practice and my work, my clinical work, and helped a lot of people. And I think about potentially training perinatally. That'd be something I was open to, conducting some more research perhaps. But I'm aware that over the next 5 to 10 years, priorities can shift and change, family, there's things like that. So being open to those things, weaving their way through as well. But all of those things should be happening in tandem, I imagine.
I think 5 to 8 years' time, I hope to be doing what I do now, still being really happy in what I do, and I hope that my business, and I think my business will grow more and have more impact on the education system with coaching. My actual dream is that I want the people who I know to have a coach, because I think everyone needs a coach. A really truly believe in coaching and well-being, the impact of that. So
It's a great concept.
yeah,
You know,
I
to have
really,
everyone has a coach
I think it's essential
in the organisation. Someone you can fall back on.
Absolutely. Someone who can champion you
Yeah,
to help you move forward.
and remind you of the things that you do well. Right?
Because we are our own worst enemies, aren't we?
Exactly.
So,
What would you, if we think about, I mean, we did touch upon this a little bit earlier on, but just to kind of maybe as a wrap up, for the students that here are, because you were once sitting here, right? For the students that are a little bit unsure or undecisive, and they have really no idea what career pathway or what to do after, or might feel that there are pressures around them that they need to know by the end of, their final year what to do in their life. What advice would you give?
I would think working out what you're good at, especially with in psychology, it's really difficult to. There's such an array of things that you can do. You almost feel like you have a decision paralysis with it because it's like, I could do this, I really like this. I think trial and error is always a good idea. Try something, if you don't like it, it's not the end of the world. You can always reapply somewhere else, but keep an open mind as to what industry or academic area you can go into, and also look at the definitions of the job titles. That's something I learned very recently, because other industries don't call your job title in psychology what they would in their industry, and it's actually the same job. So just have a little look as to where you can branch out. If you want to go more academic, try and find your niche, what you're good at, and kind of work on those skills at the same time as having some confidence, because degrees aren't easy to do, so have some, be self-assured of what your direction is, but try things, don't be self-limiting, but yeah, just try different things.
Can I just ask you a follow-up question in terms of job descriptions? Any tips for interviewing? Any of you?
Interviewing for me was very niche because a lot of it was online, and obviously some things are moving more into in person again, which is good. But I would say prepare. If you're unprepared, you can kind of get a little frantic, or prepare for the questions that you don't think they'll ask. So always go beyond the interview and what they could go into. But they always like asking what are weaknesses, and make sure that weakness isn't limiting by saying it. So just be a bit intelligent around the way you answer things, and also always follow up with a question when they say, do you have any questions? It's always good to ask them a question. And to be honest, it's a very good idea to ask them about why you should work for them, because that's an opportunity for them to sell their company to you rather than you're still selling yourself, because it kind of equals the playing field a little bit, because they are looking for that role to be filled. Why should I work for you? It's a really interesting way to frame it, because then it creates that balance again, rather than feeling like you're there trying to sell yourself and fingers crossed. It's more unprofessional. What space do I fit in here? And also it's really good to look into whether that role had been refilled a few times, and also say, why is this role open? Because they might be a bit stuck on whether there's conflict at work. You need to see what space you're going into, so definitely ask questions within their space when it's your time to ask questions about the environment that they provide, because if there's roles that need filling, was it a promotion or was it redundancies? And you can then look at your career in terms of security and safety. So definitely ask those types of questions in interviews, and don't be afraid to do that either, because then it actually looks a bit more that you're interested in a reality of that space rather than just being really keen for the job.
I love that question. Asking them why you should work for them, right?
Why should I work for you?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh.
And are they good enough?
Yeah.
Why
was the role open?
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah. Back to the other question then, with regards to any advice on what our students could do who might be feeling a little bit lost, perhaps.
It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to feel unsure what you want to do next. I think all of us have felt that at some point, so don't worry about it. Do what you enjoy, explore what you enjoy, explore things that you might enjoy, say yes to opportunities, and actually you never know. Something you thought you didn't like, you might end up liking, and actually might want to pursue that. You just don't know. So just explore.
And try not to compare yourself to your peers. either in their direction, because that is really a bad idea. Because some things happen sporadically, or they had other things that they were working on in the sideline that you weren't aware of. So don't try to compare yourself to anyone else, because everyone is obviously individuals that can bring different things. So try not to compare yourself all the time, because most academics, they go down a certain route, but you can always do it a different way. Whose timeline you're on, it's only yours, and make sure that it's right for you as well.
I think that's an amazing thing, so I won't say too much more because I do completely agree. But I think some practical things that I found really helpful, although I was lucky enough to know what I wanted to do, regardless, there was a time I was interested in educational psychology, and I quickly realised I don't want to do that, just didn't want to in the end, because I went shadowed. Sorry. It's honest, I'm sorry. I love the work that people do, but I knew that it wasn't sustainable for me over time. So I went to a clinic and I shadowed an educational psychologist, and I quickly realised it's an incredible job, but I don't think I could see longevity in it for me, because it's a very hard job. Look, you have to pick your hard, by the way, because every job's going to be hard, especially in this field. They're very challenging, systemically, for many reasons. But the type of challenging for me that I could handle after shadowing, after getting in touch with clinics that actually had some placement opportunities, I realised was a clinical space, doing psychotherapeutic work. But I think doing the shadowing was a way of finding that out, and also doing placements. And also just one little tip that I think is really important is updating your CV regularly. It's very quick, it's very easy to lose sight of all the little things you're doing, and then you look back and you're applying for jobs and you're like, what have I done lately? And you forget those really important little things, and they could be the main thing that helps you stand out. So always update your CV regularly. Yeah.
I mean, just touching on what you said, I think it's such an important point, when you decide, some of our students might decide after, if they've successfully completed level 5, that you can do a year-long placement. And some students are worried and they say, well, what if I don't like the placement I'm doing? What is it, maybe I don't want to do this particular area after that 1 year. Then I wasted my entire time? Absolutely not. Then you don't want it. But you've always learned something on that year. There are transferable skills, plus it's going to look great on your CV. You've done a placement either way, and you've done that, of course, with integrity, right? So I really like what you're saying there. Even if you do decide to do a particular pathway, and you decide at the end it's not for you, but like you, as well, and actually for you, me as well, it's okay.
Because medicine for me opened up all my publications through Oxford, because the professor that I was in the course with asked me, could you look over this manuscript, because English was a second language. And I said, yeah, of course. And then from that, I did 6 to 7 different publications with Oxford, just because he had asked me. So I gave him a favour, after class, and it led that way. I could look at that as, I wasted my time in medicine, but actually that directly influenced my next path and helped me with those skills.
Fantastic. Do you think it's time for us to open the floor and see if there's any questions?
Asleep, if not.
Shall we go for it? Right. Do we have any questions for anyone?
During study here, and about my placement, yes. It was really interesting because I knew I wanted to work with people clinically, and everyone talks about clinical psychology. I didn't particularly have an interest. I didn't really know what I would be getting myself into if I did that. I knew I liked educational, I liked psychotherapeutic work. I had no idea what any of it really meant. What's the distinction? So I actually I know I wanted to work in paediatrics though, so I worked in a paediatric outpatient department in a hospital, and I worked with children with long-term health conditions like epilepsy and cancer and all different things. So a very challenging placement under a clinical psychologist. It was during that time I realised that I don't want to do clinical psychology. I have a lot of respect for it, I now understand it, and I think that's the main value as I came to understand it. These are the professionals I will be working with when I qualify, so it's important to know where they come at it from and how they approach it. So my placement was really shadowing and assisting her and the team, but during that time I got given opportunities to shadow the educational psychologist and the local early years service, as well as the play team that work in the hospital in an inpatient setting to support the children and families. So that placement was just so enriching because I was also in contact with John. Does John still do the placement coordination, which was amazing. And I would phone him regularly to talk about how the placement's going. He would check in with me and see if there's any tweaks we can make to it, because I had a bit of an issue when the clinical psychologist had left, and he was saying other things we can do to support you further. So we're in constant communication, and during that time I learned an awful lot about FinPsych and then also EdPsych, and gradually moved towards psychotherapy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great opportunity to ask online.
I've
Yes.
got one.
Yeah, we've got one here.
I've got one anonymous one. So remember, you can post a question on the QR code.
You said that you were shadowing a clinical psychologist as part of the placement. What kind of things did that entail? Because I want to do clinical psychology, but I want to know specifically like what kind of roles are they doing. So I think it's really important to know that it varies between services what the clinical psychologist is able to offer you in terms of working as an assistant. Because I've known different experiences, people have had different experiences depending on the capacity of the service, but for me at least, it was you'd be assisting with psychometric testing, like risk assessments and ADOS assessments. When I was a bit with the EdPsych, I did that one with her really, but sort of assessments really, psychometric testing, consultation with families, team around the family meetings. We had multi-agency meetings to discuss a child, making assessments. I would shadow, because I wasn't at the level yet that I could do any sort of delivery of any support myself. I was mostly shadowing those things, going to complex meetings where there's a complex patient, or strategy meetings for safeguarding. So I was just kind of assisting and supporting her with everything, just watching and taking notes of those things, taking the minutes, and also making resources for families. I would make a lot of guides on how to manage certain symptoms that the children are suffering with and how to reframe, because she did a lot of work with acceptance and commitment therapy. That's the one. I haven't used it on for a while, but it's a very helpful strategy to help reframe pain, chronic pain, and things like that. As well as that, I would also take patient histories, like their healthcare history, and I'd go through the system and provide a summary for the psychologists. So those are the main things I was doing.
There's also NHS programs where you can go on and be in a training scheme. So even as a postgraduate, if you want to do placement, obviously it's amazing. But if you wanted a bit more financial support with that, they do actually fund the training as well as pay you to do it. So I'm looking into this training schemes, especially for local trusts, because they do train clinical psychologists or psychotherapists. If you can find your niche, and then they do offer lots of those training courses, whether you are in the hospitals being trained as well as being paid to do it. And they also offer a lot of grants for those things as well. So definitely look on the NHS, because there are lots of those things around.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, my training that I'll be going for, the professional training, much like the clinical psychology, the D-Clin, this is a D-Psych. So it's a 4-year psychotherapy training. It's a professional training. You're funded to do that. They pay you a salary, and you work as a trainee, which is a legally protected title in a service. It will be the same if you did clinical psychology for 3 years. So yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room? We've got an anonymous question, or two now actually. So how and when, so this is to all the panelists, how and when did you know what you wanted to pursue after university, and what helped you to come to that conclusion? In any order.
I think I knew that I loved children. I wanted to work with children in some sort of way, so that's why I looked into education psychology. I don't know if it's changed now, hasn't it? Before we had to do PGCE, then 2 years teaching, and then a doctorate, and now it's a straight route yet. So for me, I just always knew I loved working with children.
So I actually always wanted to be in the medical area, and me wanting to do medicine came from my childhood, if I'm honest. I always wanted to do it, and then I went to do psychology at Westminster, but actually I transferred in my first year to the neuroscience course. So I kind of took a different route, and then I actually really enjoyed that. So I then went on to the research in those areas. So my pre-idea of what I wanted. It was kind of there, it's a bit embedded, but as it progressed, it kind of turned into something different. So I guess with my career trajectory was always there before I went to university. Obviously, I've taken a bit of a different detour, but it's been really good. I've really enjoyed it. I'm actually a bit more comfortable in that area as well, so I actually learned something about myself in that process, and that maybe that goal that I clung on to for dear life doesn't have to be the be-all and end-all. There are other areas for you, but it was pretty much predetermined what I wanted to go into, but that's the surprises, so you just change, be open to change.
I think I touched on that a little bit earlier, that I said I wanted to do Spanish for a while, and I realised that my interest was psychology, and I was just spending most of my time doing that. So I think I've always been interested in children and loved children, and I was always very maternal as well. That's always something that I've really enjoyed, being around the children in my life, my family, and had an interest in mental health and well-being because of my early experiences of it in adolescence. So I think that's kind of, it was always, I was sowing the seeds unconsciously, and then when I got to university age, I realised, I need to start thinking about what this really means and actually spend most of my time doing this, and perhaps this is what I want to do. And naturally, it was always going to be children, and I knew that really from early on, and it was just a case of figuring out how do I get there. But yeah.
Great, we've had quite a few more questions come in, which is brilliant, so thanks. So for you, Nima, can you talk more about what you studied exactly in order to become a certified life coach, and what kind of qualifications do you need for that?
So, I did psychology here, then I did a PGC. So you can become a life coach in so many different ways. You don't need to do my route, but I think psychology helped me majorly to understand I wanted to do life coaching, well-being life coaching. So I did a psychology degree, I did PGC, it was teaching, I was teaching. Experience taught me that I wanted to do coaching. I studied at the coaching academy and did a life performance coaching diploma. Then I did NLP, then I did NLP training, and then I began to get my accreditation at the Association of Coaching. So with coaching, you can get into health coaching, you can get into leadership coaching, you can get into business coaching, you can get into executive coaching. There's so many different areas of coaching you can get into that if you want, come and talk to me if you want to know more about it. But there's so many different routes basically. But yeah, that was my route.
Brilliant, thanks, Nima. Anyone in the room? Otherwise, I'll just crack on with the QR code business. So I think it's for everyone on the panel. As a second-year student trying to explore different pathways, what practical steps would you recommend we should take in the next 12 months to stay competitive? I know you've kind of covered a lot of those points, but maybe a little summary, if you're able to anyone.
I would suggest getting a little portfolio together of what you've already done. Note it down as you're doing it, because you will forget, and especially when it comes to writing your CV, you'll go, oh, what did we do? Oh, I can't remember how I did that. Make sure you write down every single skill that you have earned through hard work. You give yourself the credit on your CV, definitely. Make sure that if there's any gaps in your CV or, academically what you can work on, really self-reflect in this time, because you have a really good year to see what you can do. I'll speak to mentors and supervisors, ask people questions all the time, how they did, what route they went down, and also just put a feeler out there, job-wise as to what you might want to do, reach out to those places, maybe do an internship or a summer course. I think upskill yourself is probably the most essential thing to do. I know I mentioned it before, but phlebotomy for some reason is really sought after in research because we've all come from an academic background with dry lab, but when we need a clinician, not many people want to pay for a doctor to come and take a blood test, so that's a really easy skill for you to shine in most clinical trials. But yeah, get a portfolio together and just write everything down that you've been doing. It's so important because you will forget about it, and also you'll see job specifications, try to match them now, or see, okay, there's a specification I can't meet, how can I next year so that I am a bit ahead of other people.
That's excellent. I think just looking at the job specs can give you a good idea as to what you're getting yourself into as well. and just understanding their jobs better and sort of looking at the job market as well. It's kind of good to just monitor it casually whilst you're early on in your degree, just to see where you'd be at, and things can change quickly, you never know, but it's good to do. But I think, not to keep hammering the point, but placement year, placement modules, get in touch with local clinics and see if they wouldn't mind having you there to shadow for a few months or a few weeks even. You can learn a lot in a short amount of time if you're open to it. I think just being open to any, experience where you can look and actually see hands-on what's going on, even if you're not maybe allowed to do things yourself, just seeing and observing, feeling what it feels like to be in the room to do that thing is really important. There's a lot to be said for it, and it's a lot more powerful than you'll realise. But I really do encourage the placement year if you have the means, because it was life-altering for me. And also, being in a different cohort can be scary, because you have a cohort of friends and you don't want to be separated from them, but you make more friends in the next cohort and you have double the friends, which is very nice. And it's worth graduating a year later with that knowledge and with that extra maturity and understanding of yourself. So,
I think both of you summarised really well actually. So the only thing I'd like to add is surround yourself with people that can mentor you, can teach you, reach out to people if you're interested in something. LinkedIn, social media, doesn't matter. It can be a stranger, doesn't matter. Ask for help, reach out for help, ask for advice, because that can be priceless and something that you would have had to find out through research by yourself and be told to you in 2 seconds rather than two weeks. So just surround yourself with people who you can learn from.
Excellent, thanks. They keep coming in, so some we might have to answer on the panel pretty quickly towards the end, but we'll see how we go. Here's a bit of a different one. Is it difficult to shift career directions if you don't necessarily want to follow the psychology career path, even when you have a psychology degree related to career?
Definitely not. I think I experienced that this year quite heavily. What I think, if you do want to go down to psychology, I think don't waste those skills. I would suggest HR is a really good route to go down. Sustainability is really big for psychology students, environmental health as well, public health. There's many different areas that you can go down. I know that something quite up and coming at the moment is really niche again, is translating for psychology. So a lot of industry people who have English as their second language actually come and get English teachers who already have psychology degrees to help them brush up on their terminologies, especially for conferences or more corporate events. They will hire you individually or you can do it in groups. There's a few companies that I could give you guys, because I know it's quite busy at the moment. If you haven't got psychology as a background, where you can teach the other people some English skills around your topic. You don't necessarily have to speak their language, but that's thing as well. So there's lots of different ways you can apply psychology, and they are valued degrees. They really are, especially in HR. That's a really big one. But you can pivot your career as long as you've got the skills and your translational. Don't limit yourself in your CV and how you frame yourself, particularly know your narrative, and also adjust your CV and your cover letters per role you're applying for, because you can't just send out the same batch going out because they're not applicable to the specification. See the realism as whether you can meet it. And also honesty is a really good thing. You can say, I don't need that skill, but I'm willing to learn. That always goes down well, because they do have internal training as well that they can offer you, or you might just see the reality of that and go, okay, that doesn't fit me, but something along those lines I'm going to go and look into. I think just don't fear the fact that you've stuck with one path and that's it. It isn't. There's so many other options you can do, and it is a good thing to stay open-minded.
So I won't have too much to add to this comparatively, but I do think what you said is really important, and that even when I did my degree and I had all the things I needed for a Spanish degree but not a psychology degree, and I found out that every single subject was facilitating, and that was only by asking. And I think it's actually statistically women are more likely to not apply to jobs that they don't feel they're entirely qualified for, so make sure regardless that you're applying, because they'll tell you it's worth doing if you're interested enough. There's training, as you said, but if they like you enough, they'll want to invest in you, so don't let it hold you back. You don't need to have every single requirement. It's not like the academic field is so much, and even then give it a go. So yeah.
I think you've covered all both of you, so I think psychology, we're lucky to do psychology because it gives you such a varied skill set, and actually can be applied to anything, any job.
Let's see. They just keep coming in questions, so thanks, but we might not get through all of them. There are some specific ones. I'll combine a couple, which I think are for Phoebe primarily. So, what's the thing you find most challenging when working with children? And I can repeat if needed. What kind of things do you do working as a learning assistant? Is it with vulnerable students with various needs, or is it just in general?
So what were the first part of the question? Sorry.
What's the thing you find most challenging when working with children?
Okay, sometimes it's actually more the parents than it is the children that are the challenge, and it's getting, because there's a lot of defences there, as you can imagine, so there's a lot to working with children. I'm happy to talk to you after more specifically about things when I'm conscious of time, but I do think it is a case of knowing that you're going to work with the whole family, and there's a lot of things that come with that. The children themselves, it varies. It varies on the level of need, the age, the reason why they're there. Because sometimes they're not self-referring. They look to you, or you're just seeing them in an acute setting. So that's challenging. But you need to be creative, and you need to be open and patient, and you need to want to do it. Otherwise, everything's a challenge. I know that's probably not the most satisfying answer, but I think that is the case. And the second half of the question, sorry, my memory is not good today.
It's what kind of things do you do working as a learning assistant? Is it with vulnerable students within various, or I guess with various needs, or just more in general?
So the work varies depending on the type of school you're at. If you're in a mainstream school versus a special educational needs school, and your role itself it varies depending on the type of role. There's different levels of need you can apply to work in. There was one school where I was more specialised in SEMH, so social emotional mental health needs, and the language needs of the children, and I was doing a mixture of lunchtime clubs and assisting them in the class one-on-one, or working with multiple students when there was a high level of need and not enough staff members, and doing a mixture of play work with them and also educational work. So the job itself is very varied. You could also work in a high level of need where you need to do more physical handling of the children and personal care and things like that. So it's important to be aware of those things if you're applying to those roles, knowing what your limits are, knowing what you feel comfortable with, and your level of training, and ensuring that you have enough training to do certain roles, because you need to keep yourself safe and the children safe, and things can get quite physical sometimes, but it depends on the level of need and the severity and the environment you're working in.
Perfect. Thank you, Phoebe. Just one final question, a quick one for Ursula. Sorry, I couldn't get to all the others, but we need a bit of time for networking with the speakers and a small presentation from my colleague. But Ursula, what advice would you give to students who are potentially interested in neurology, and how should they approach it?
Definitely go and do postgraduate. You need the extra skills, particularly around neuroscience. I wouldn't limit just to an undergraduate. I would definitely look at doing a master's in neuroscience, just because the additional skills and the research that you get to be involved in is really heavy. During my master's, we had something called the Brain Bank at King's, so we'd be able to go into the Brain Bank, and there's basically a stock of brains of different diseases, and you can go in and pick one. It was frozen, obviously, but pick one and then work with it. You have lots of opportunities for vaccine work. You can kind of go down different avenues as to what you want to do, but if you want to go down the neurology route, it depends if you want to do that with medicine as well. If you have done a degree and postgraduate degree, you can go on to do graduate medicine, which is only 4 years, not 6, which is really useful. There's actually some online options for some of that as well, which is really good. It's a lot of European medical schools, they offer you to do 2 years studying remotely and then go and do your practicals in person. So particularly that was great for me with my health. You can go, there's different areas of neurology you can go into. It depends on whether you want to go into neuroscience research. I went to neurogastroenterology, which is really interesting because it's about brain and gut axis and how your mindset can also affect your health and those things. So it really depends on what area you want to go into, but I really would go and get a second degree if you want to go into neuro, just because it is quite advanced in terms of depth. And that's basically, I would get a master's in all this and then go from there.
Perfect, thank you. I'll very quickly say a massive thanks to our alumni panel and to Chantal for organising this with my team at Hayden from the Alumni Relations team. And thanks to you for showing up. Thanks.
Yeah, let's give applause.